In this refulgent summer, it has been a luxury to draw the breath of life. That's how Ralph Waldo Emerson's Divinity School address begins. As in 1838, so in 2014, the grass grows, the buds burst, the meadow is spotted with fire and gold in the tint of flowers. At least around here, the weather of summer 2014 has been extraordinarily mild. I cannot recall a lovelier time to be alive. In all other respects than the weather, though, this has been a horrible summer. The murder of U.S. journalist James Foley by ISIS was only the latest humanitarian disaster we've seen. The Israel-Hamas conflict resulting in thousands of deaths by non-combatants in Gaza. The ongoing crisis of Central American children at the border. The attacks on Christians and Yazidis in Iraq and Syria. I have enjoyed the outdoors this summer both for the weather itself and as an escape from the pain I encounter in the news. But speaking as an American, the most painful story for me of all this year has been the ongoing situation in Ferguson, Missouri. It's a hard story in so many respects. It involves yet another shooting of an unarmed African American by a white person. It exposed the multiple conflicting ways in which whites and blacks understand and respond to events. It showed a local government and police force more concerned with justifying themselves than with getting at the truth. And it reminded us all that the hopes of racial justice, articulated 45 years ago in this pulpit by Dr. Martin Luther King, have yet to be fulfilled. At the center of the Ferguson tragedy, of course, lies the body of Michael Brown, a young man perched between high school and college, dead of 6 shots to the body, 2 of them to his head. For some reason I don't understand, my white clergy colleagues have been slower than our sisters and brothers of color to respond to Michael Brown's death, just as it took us a while to grasp the implications of Trayvon Martin's or Emmett Till's. But the concerns of Ferguson are the concerns of Northwest Washington, too. As William Sloane Coffin Jr. used to tell his congregation at Yale in the 1960s, New Haven cannot be a safe haven. So how do we, as Americans and as Christians, begin not only to understand, but respond to it? Today's readings give us some help. This morning's Old Testament reading turns on a stunning act of civil disobedience. Pharaoh lives in fear of the growing Hebrew population in Egypt, and he orders that all male Hebrew babies be killed. We are told that 2 Egyptian midwives, brave women named Shiphrah and Puah, feared the Lord, and so they disobeyed Pharaoh's orders. They let male Hebrew babies live, and this act of disobedience eventually allowed the baby Moses to escape infanticide and to grow up to be the one who would lead Israel out of slavery in the Exodus. It is no accident that African American religious leaders have historically looked to the story of Moses and have seen parallels in it between Egypt and America. The Exodus story points those of us in the dominant culture to an uncomfortable parable with the Bible's Egyptians. We are told that the motivation for Pharaoh's actions was fear. As Pharaoh says in that passage, "Look, the Israelite people are more numerous and more powerful than we. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, or they will increase, and in the event of war, join with our enemies and fight against us and escape from the land." Egyptian ruthlessness begins in a sense of vulnerability. There is an other in the land, and if we don't watch out, that other will take us over. In the Bible's diagnosis, human oppression and human cruelty start with fear. And fear starts in ignorance. As our Exodus story begins, a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. We fear what we do not know. And if we have power, we find it easier to control and contain what we do not know than to make the effort to understand it. That was true in the Egypt of 1400 BC. It was true in the Roman-occupied Jewish Palestine of Jesus' day. It was true in the days of slavery and Jim Crow, and it is true in our day too. This morning's gospel tells the story that we Christians have come to call the Confession of Peter. When Jesus asks his companions who others say that he is, only Peter gets it right. You are the Messiah, the Christ, the Son of the living God. Now, Messiah means anointed. It is the Hebrew word that we render in Greek as Christ. Both terms signify kingly authority. King David was anointed, and so is Jesus. The term has radical political implications, especially in an occupied territory. The Romans denied the Jews their own royal authority. The Jews looked for a Messiah, a Christ, an anointed king to bring that authority back. When Peter realizes that Jesus is the Messiah, the anointed, the Christ, he is recognizing something deep and powerful about God and about us. Most of us are impressed by shows of strength, royal pomp, a display of weapons, as signs of power and authority. But Jesus, for us, is the Christ, the Messiah, the anointed one, because he is effectively an anti-king. Jesus is not Caesar, nor does he pretend to be. What Caesar offers is a grotesque parody of authentic authority. What Jesus offers is the real deal. He brings compassion instead of hatred, healing instead of abuse, trust instead of threats. In this story of Peter's confession, we see at least one person finally getting it. Real kings do not look and act like Caesar. They look and act like Jesus. What Jesus represents is what the power at the center of the universe really looks like. And it's in response to this dramatic recognition that Jesus makes the surprising gift to Peter. He says, I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. In our context this morning, what Jesus clearly means by binding and loosing is the power either to imprison or to set free. When you get it, as Peter got it, that Jesus is the Messiah, when you get it that real power lies in love rather than force, when you get it that the other whom you fear is really your brother or sister on this earthly pilgrimage, when you get all that, then you, like Peter, have been given the power not only to set others free, but to be set free yourself. Speaking as a white American Christian male this morning, I want to say that it is time that we, with Peter, claim the power that Jesus gives us to set ourselves and each other free. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven, And whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Jesus here gives us a choice. We can stay locked in the prison of our own fear, or we can loosen the chains and step toward the marginalized and the oppressed people of our nation and our world. We can move toward the other not in riot gear. We can move toward the other in riot gear, or we can move with open arms. We have a choice. And in giving those keys to Peter, Jesus gives us the power to make it. We can make that choice first by deciding to stand with the people of Ferguson, not only in their grief, but in their anger. We can make that choice next by calling for a true accounting of Michael Brown's killing and a legal process of justice. And we can make that choice by moving personally and corporately out of our comfort zones into actual engagement with people we fear because we do not know. In empowering Peter to bind and to loose, to imprison or to set free, Jesus has given us the power to liberate our brothers, our sisters, and ourselves. It is a sad truth that the deaths of poor young people of color in D.C., in Ferguson, in Gaza, at our border, do not seem to matter to the wider world very much. We no longer have the luxury of refusing to care when unarmed African Americans are killed by fearful whites. Trayvon Martin shot while George Zimmerman was standing his Florida ground. Eric Garner killed by a New York police chokehold for selling loose cigarettes. Renisha McBride shot by a Michigan homeowner when she asked for help. Ezell Ford, a 25-year-old mentally ill man, shot by California police. Michael Brown, shot by a Ferguson, Missouri officer for reasons yet to be discovered. Those of us not directly affected by this violence no longer have the luxury of staying safely in our own hidey holes of ignorance. As Bill Coffin said, New Haven cannot be a safe haven. As Martin Luther King said, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. There is nothing more important for us American Christians at this moment in history than facing into our own fear and its implications. We no longer have the luxury of refusing to understand. Racial justice will only come about as we join with others to demand it. And when we do that, when we do the work to move with Jesus and Moses and Peter out of our fear into self-knowledge and compassion, when we do all that, then we will loosen the chains that bind us. And it will truly be, in this refulgent summer, a luxury to draw the breath of life. Amen.